Hey guys, I'm formatting this tutorial a little bit differently than usual. I've already pre-coded everything, and I'm going to kind of commentate and just show you the concept that I'm trying to get across to you, rather than coding it out by scratch as you watch me. Because you already know how to code all of this, essentially, that I know of anyways. You just probably don't know the concept that I'm talking about. So basically, in this tutorial, as I promised, I'm going to talk about modifiers, more specifically access modifiers. I keep alluding to these modifiers, telling you I'm going to talk about them, I'm going to talk about them, I'm going to talk about them, and finally it's here. I'm going to finally just shed some light on what these things are. Now, they are public and private. Right now all these are public, but I could change any one of them to private. And then there's another modifier called static, which is not an access modifier, but it's a modifier nonetheless. Now, access modifiers change where a variable or method can be accessed from. So as of right now, we have a class called guy, and we have two variables within that class. One is age and one is height. Both of them are public. One of them is static. I'll go over static in a minute, but for now let's just address public and private. Notice how over here we have an int result in our form1.cs, and our int result is set to guy1.height. So we can access height right now. It's working perfectly. There's no errors down here. But look what happens when I change the height to private. If I change it to private, notice we get an error saying guy.height is inaccessible due to its protection level. Now that is because a public variable can be accessed within and outside of the class it inhabits. So it can be accessed outside of the guy class and also within the guy class. While a private variable can only be accessed within its class, so within the guy class. It cannot be accessed outside of it. For instance, our form1 class right here. So how do we fix this? Well, a lot of times you won't want direct access to a variable to be given, so you won't want a variable to be private. So we're going to leave that height to private right now, and we've got this other thing over here. We've got a method. It's a public getHeight method, and this lets you take your height variable and hide it within some other code, and it lets you do multiple things with it. You can encode it, you can do whatever you want. But this is often more safe for programmers to put it within a get method that is public, while the variable remains private. So we've got our int height, for instance, which we no longer now need this other height out here because it's being done through the getHeight method. So basically, we've got our height of 5, and it is returned through this method. Now, this method is public, right? This method is public, so we can get the height through this. If it was private, we wouldn't be able to get it. But now we've put it in a function that we can safely give to the user as public. We're going to just use the guy getHeight method, which will return it and set the result to that, and it will be outputted as 5. Some guy is 5 feet tall. So that is public and private. Not that difficult, very easy to discern. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is static. Whenever you give something the static modifier, it essentially says that that can only be accessed as a class. It cannot be accessed as an instance. Now, I know we haven't talked about instances yet. In my next video, I'm going to run down kind of what instances are and introduce instances to you. We're not going to do a coding project for instances because that's a more advanced topic. I'm going to save that for more intermediate tutorials that will come later on. It's just not ready for the basic tutorials. So I created a basic instance here to show you what they are. Basically, you just say what type of variable it is. In this case, it's not a variable. It's using the class guy. So it's creating a new instance of the class guy. We're calling this instance Joe. and we're setting it equal to a new instance of guy. I know it's a bit confusing. Think of it as creating a variable of guy, naming it Joe, and then creating a new instance of that class guy. You can actually create a constructor method that you can pass variables through here that actually constructs it a certain way, but that's a little more advanced, so we're straying away from that for now. So anyways, think of it as a variable that we now have, but it really is an instance. It's like accessing the class, but it's its own special version of that class. Think of it as if we had a car class, we could create instances like Ferrari and Toyota and Ford, and different instances like that. And with guys, we can create like Bob and Joe and Jim, stuff like that. So we've created a Joe guy, who is now a new instance of guy. And as you can see in here, we have a public integer known as age. And right now we set Joe's age, Joe.age, to 10. So Joe now has an age of 10. So he's clearly a little kid, but here's the problem. If you had it at static, if you were to put this at static, then we'll have a problem. We'll have an error, because Joe is an instance. You cannot change the age of Joe because he is an instance. Age can only be accessed if it's just guy.age. So if it was just the class, if it was not Joe, if it was the class as a whole, just the class, not any particular instance of the class, but as a whole. For instance, if we have a class called like Toyota, then we could have a static integer of, for instance, year or something like that, and it could be the well, no, that doesn't make sense. Okay, we could have it as like manufacturer or country of origin or something like that. And for instance, if we took Toyota, that'd be Japan, so country of origin would be Japan, and that would be a static integer because it is the same throughout all instances of Toyota. All Toyotas will be Japanese. Well, that I know of anyways. They probably have some that are manufactured in America, but as far as age and color and model, those will all be specific to each instance of the car, to each model of Toyota. So basically, think of it just as the entirety of the class rather than an instance of that class. So that is what static does. Static makes it so it has to be the entire class rather than just any instance of that class. So I hope you learned what access modifiers are and what modifiers are. I hope you found it helpful. It will come in handy in the future, so definitely keep it under your belt. And I'll see you next time, and signing off.